Hello, I'm Glenn Mattern, Director of Business Development here at Play MPE, currently working out of my kitchen slash living room here in my house in Vancouver. Today's topic is music promotion, and what better person to help us with that than Amanda Alexandrakis, who's from Music Promotion Inc., and I think the name kind of says it all. Amanda's not just a music marketing maven, she's also an active member of the American Marketing Association, as well as the Recording Academy. You may have heard of the Grammys. She's also worked on multiple projects that have won or been nominated for a Grammy, and she's been recognized by the Recording Academy for her professional contributions 4 times. Hi, Amanda. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
Hi, Glenn. Hi, Glenn. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
How's the weather down in Fort Collins, Colorado today?
Oh, it's getting hot. It's getting hot out there.
Yeah, you're safe and healthy, though?
Safe and healthy. We are following the rules, staying home, and wearing masks. So we're all good.
That's great. I guess the first thing to ask you is how and when did you get into the music business?
You know, I was very young. I started kind of getting my feet wet when I was about 16 years old. It was not a decision I made consciously about getting into the music business. In fact, I was avoiding it. But I had 2 friends in high school who were sisters whose mom was a 60s singer named Melanie. And she performed, Woodstock, and they were still doing a lot of touring, and they did backup singing for her. And so they would invite me to all their shows. And so on the weekends, we were doing shows with all of the 60s artists. And
Amazing.
it was fun. So just out of default, they would call me their manager, and really no. And I was going to go to college for marketing, and I didn't really have any interest in the music business, but that's where I kind of ended up.
So there was no real catalyst. It just sort of happened.
It found me. I was going to be a stunt woman. I was doing stunts, and I was teaching gymnastics, and I was doing a totally different thing.
It's a natural progression.
Right? Yeah. I told my boss, which was their dad, I said, I'm leaving to go do, the Batman stunt show at Six Flags. I'm going to audition for that. And I was convinced I was going to get it. And I'm like, and then I broke my wrist about a week before the audition. Wow. And I ended up staying in music.
It built its hand somehow. So, and what about music promotion specifically? And was there something about it that got you excited, or what gets you excited about music promotion?
It was really exciting because my first day at that record label, I was about 18 or 19 years old. So I'd been touring and doing stuff, and their parents said, we think you'd be great at the phone, on the phone with radio. And I said, okay. I took about a week to decide. Then I said, okay. And my first day of work, I made them, I think it was it was $25,000 my first day. And then my second day, I made them like 20 grand or something. So a week later, they made me promotions director of the little label. Yeah. And so right off the bat, my schedule changed. I was in the office all the time, and I was liking it. I mean, I was seeing success with it, and I thought it was really fun, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I was doing my best. So it was good.
Good job. So you had some natural ability for sure. So
it was fun. Yeah. It came easily to me. I never had to quote intern or work for free. It was, start work and get to work very quickly.
Is there anything that excites you about it? Like, what's the most exciting part of the job? Is there?
My favorite is development. I love to see, I think it's a lot easier to promote somebody who already has a big name and it's done all that work, but it's really challenging when you have somebody new that people don't know yet. So when you take a project from infancy to wherever it is you're taking it, it's very rewarding to see the progress. So that's my favorite thing.
That's great. It's pretty hard to ignore the current climate and how it's affecting the music industry. So how have your marketing promotion strategies changed during the pandemic?
Well, I think probably like everybody else, we're all trying to get our footing in this pandemic. We had a project that we sent out in February, and our strategy in February until now has changed drastically, and we've had to pivot and change things and be very flexible. That being said, that project has done really well, and we're seeing people who are flexible and changing with the times and rolling, with the punches, so to speak. seem to be doing well. The ones that are hit the hardest are obviously the touring acts, and they're having to transition to try to monetize, things online and,
Right.
shift to digital marketing. And it is it's a changing scene, constant change. But I'll be honest, pandemic aside, I'm actually really enjoying it. So, it's been a very interesting learning experience, and it's been challenging and rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, I guess that's the importance of being strategic, right? And I guess maybe can you explain a little bit to everyone what strategic marketing is and what makes it so important?
Well, strategic marketing is basically somebody who's driving the ship, so to speak. So you really have to be goal oriented and objective oriented. So what I do is I figure out what the end goal is and I work backwards from there. So we put together, a 6-month plan, a year plan, maybe as long as a 5-year plan. And then we figure out where something needs to be. And that strategy is geared towards that objective.
So how would you market a top 40 artist versus an indie artist versus, say, some niche artist? Can you kind of walk us through the differences?
Sure. A niche artist would be obviously very specialized. If you have something that, let's say, is new age or contemporary instrumental, something to that effect, obviously you're really targeting and there's 2 ways that you're marketing something. You could be marketing towards the industry so people know who you are, which is really important for an emerging artist to come in. And then there's marketing to potential fans or current fans. And so when you are doing those types of strategies, you got to watch, the social media, if that's a component, which it usually is. Or, if we're going after radio, or you're going after an awards category, or whatever it is. So when you're doing niche, obviously you're focusing on a smaller subset of people. Whereas if we have something that's top 40, that's known, obviously you also have most of the time bigger budgets to work with. They're kind of more of the sexy, glossy, exciting campaigns. When you're dealing with something more niche, it's really in the trenches, and you're having to really work on shoestring budgets most of the time. And the same with an independent band or artist. You're very limited. So you almost have to be really creative. And then you also have to really watch budgets.
Sure. And in this age of technology and market saturation, these marketing strategies are critical. Can you give me some examples which have set your artists apart as unique, to kind of stand out, or maybe some what results did you see from that?
Yeah, I guess I can use my husband as an example. Sure. His name is Alexandrakis, and it's one of my more challenging projects that I work with, and I'm married to him. But that is hard.
To be so difficult, right?
Well, it is a different, it's a different process being the wife of versus, just the promoter or whatnot. But his music is so across the board, but he does have a characteristic that's unique to him. And, he does everything from avant-garde to spoken word and everything in between, which isn't necessarily like, hey, this is an obvious radio track, or this isn't something you would, now there are songs that he does that are radio, but it's really across the board. So his last project that we worked on got nominated for a spoken word Grammy this year, which is very exciting.
Amazing.
And thank you. Yeah. And we had been working on, he did these other spoken word projects, which really built up to this, and they're in various forms. And so the Grammy wasn't the end goal per se, but when you have an artist who does music and spoken word, it's very challenging to really marry those 2 together. So with something like that, you have to be really creative. He's really good with using the digitals and the platforms of social media and whatnot. And he's unique, and he gets his ideas across. As a promoter, I have to take what he's given me, which is difficult because it's not usually industry standard. Like, hey, we have this perfect, photo. Yeah. Hey, he likes to really blur things up and make them crazy artistic photos that I have to somehow bring to the mainstream. So it's a bit more difficult, but it's fun. It is fun.
Yeah, sounds like he's one of your favorite projects. Any other interesting projects you've done in the last few years, or ones that were, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say names because I get stuck into confidentiality
Sure.
contracts, but we
Rock
have
with-
yeah, we have I have a couple I'm working on right now that I'm really excited about. One is connected to a film. It's a soundtrack, and the film hasn't come out yet, but it's pretty exciting to be able to work. This one happens to be children's music, which is really I love the children's I just think they're fun. I also have a new age record, which is pretty interesting because I keep saying I don't work new age, but my new age projects have done pretty well in the last few years. So I kind of do, but I don't talk about that very much. But I'm very excited about this new age project that's out there. And we also have this young girl who's doing pop right now, and she's an incredible songwriter, and her voice is really unique. So we've been pulling some really great things, having to pivot in this new environment. And she just did a Live Nation digital tour, which was like, I think it's like 30 plus countries. And it's did some stuff with Ticketmaster. We're working with a lot of stuff overseas and in Europe with her. So there's a lot of fun opportunities out there if you have your eyes looking for them,
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you're into a lot of really interesting things and quite varied as well. So,
Yeah, it's funny. I try to say, if you're doing strictly radio or you're doing, publicity, usually sticking to one genre has been the rule for so long. But I really started shifting my work towards strategy. And
yeah,
so when I started doing that, I started getting involved with more genres and more formats. And then I bring in other partners and team members who specialize, and then we all work together to really, accomplish our objectives as much as we can. So I shifted what I do quite a bit. And I mean, I was already doing that before the pandemic, but of course the pandemic accelerated that very
sure.
much.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're all pivoting. So
We are all pivoting. And if you're not, you're probably in trouble.
yeah, exactly. So keep on one foot and spinning. So
Exactly.
now this is coming up a lot due to the rise of streaming platforms. But do you think artists should release an album or a single? And I guess in addition to that, how does one push an album in a single-driven market? If that's the case.
Well, it's funny that obviously that's come up a lot.
Yeah.
And it really depends, again, on your objectives. And it depends a lot on your genre that you specialize in as well. If you are a new age artist, the market out there doesn't really cater to singles if you're a new age artist. If you are a AAA artist in the US, it's very much album based. If you're going to do a radio campaign, they expect an EP or an album.
Right.
There is some shift recently where we can put out a single, but it's going to be limited. You're not going to get its full potential. And usually those are done to set up for an album that's coming, shortly after that release. But I think eventually those genres will catch up, not necessarily new age, but some of this is going to catch up to the times. Now, if you're an artist that is, let's say, more pop based, then it's fine to put out single by single. But you have to be careful if you're going after radio that you don't put the singles out too close together. If you're doing full campaigns, we are seeing people want to do once a month. But if you're doing radio, you got to give radio time to develop before you put another single out there. So that's how
we see this on our side as well, where it's not so much our job to coach, but we do like to suggest sometimes that you might want to give some time so that people have sufficient.
Yeah, I like the idea. I mean, I'm torn for many different reasons. I do think having an album is important. It's a work of art. You I think can penetrate deeper with building a fan base. If they're really into you, they want more. But kids or the younger generation now are so accustomed to single after single and stuff coming out quickly. And I don't think the attention span is as, it's just the way that this generation is. Everything's instant gratification. Everything's quick. And so, I come from the world where when I first started working, we didn't have even email and we were using fax machines. And I was working this when I was going through college. And at the beginning of college, we were writing out papers. And by the end of my college career, everything was digital with laptops in the classroom. And so my experience goes from kind of a little more old school into more, you know, I tend to have to juggle those two things quite a bit.
I predate fax machines. Just
I was telling a client a couple days ago that when we started, we didn't have cell phones. So when we had bands on the road and we had to get information, they were pulling off the side of the road and calling us on an 800 number so we could tell them where their next interviews were and where they needed to be. And I'd have them call in every couple hours or so and check in, because if we booked something for that evening, they needed to know. And they're like, the person was like, wow, that's really horrible. I'm like, well, it worked at the time. You know, with technology now, bands have to adjust to it. I have certain opinions on certain things that I don't like where the industry has gone, and I think we've for the most part backed ourselves into a corner, but it is what it is, and now everybody has to adjust to it. So I think as a whole, everybody is trying to figure out not only the new landscape that came in with things like Spotify and, you know, trying to monetize sales and make money off of things online, but also, you know, we get the double whammy of a pandemic while all this is going on. But I do see positives too, which is it's forcing people to think differently, which is, I think, a great thing too. Not only with musicians and bands, but with how people enjoy music, and people who weren't normally on things like Zoom or in you know, it's forcing fans to be online and look for how we're getting music. And there has been opportunities that have opened up for this type of thing. So, you know, there's good and bad with what we've been experiencing.
exactly. Yeah, I agree. It's a changing world, but not all bad. Not all bad.
No, not all bad at all. Yeah, now there are people that would probably get upset over that statement because they've been devastated by live shows, and I understand completely. You know, my view comes as somebody who's handling marketing versus, you know, somebody who's dealing with
Yeah.
that. So
Mine as well, for sure, for sure.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as a site, you know, we do use Play MPE for our single digital delivery to radio. In fact, when we did I worked Australia probably close to 10 years now, everything. That's where I was first introduced to, well, my first account through Play MPE. So we've been using the services for many years, and it's wonderful because if it doesn't exist, we have to create our own digital delivery systems, which is never fun to do nor to upkeep. So
yeah, Australia is a great market for us. Where should an artist hire a music promoter and or a PR team as part of their overall marketing plan, or can they do it yourself certain aspects?
well, I'm a big proponent for artists who should constantly be learning skills so that they can promote themselves. Just like any business, you know, you need to know how to do marketing, at least basic. You need to understand why you do PR and how it's going to contribute to your overall strategy and how it's going to help you. You can't go in blindly. Music promoters, publicists, everybody should be part of your team. When you're first starting out, you're not usually dealing on a national or international level. And so you're dealing on a regional or even statewide or even in your own city. And so in those cases, it really, you don't have to hire a big team for that. You can send to your local press and your local newspapers and whatnot on your own. And I think it's really important that artists do that, even if they can't afford to hire teams, because it teaches them how this all plays in the future. Yes, the teams are important, but not everybody can afford them. And if you can learn how to not only do it yourself, but why you need other people in the future, that's really what you should be doing. It really just depends on what stage you're in.
So how do they know when they're ready to build the team? Like, is there a stage that you should start thinking about that?
Yeah, when you're having to spend 24/7 trying to manage the business side of working on a band versus being the musician and creating the art, and when it gets to the point where you are being pulled in too many different directions, then that would probably be the best time to start bringing in team members to help.
Yeah. Who do they, and who would they want on their team?
Well, it depends on many factors, genre, where depends on where you want to target. For instance, if we have a band that's AAA radio, let's say they're like an Americana or singer-songwriter, and they want to go after radio, and they release here in the US, and they could do some local community stations at first, but hey, we've got this new album coming out, we want to go do something more serious, so they service it nationally to stations in the US. And at that point, again, it depends how serious the band is, but if there's a budget to hire a promoter, they should, because could they call stations themselves? Technically, yes. It's not brain surgery. It's not hard. It's just time consuming. And so should they consider that if they can afford it? Yes. And then it gets more complicated, because then after that campaign's over, okay, now what do we do? They could go and record a new CD, which I don't think is the greatest idea right off the bat. I think you have to stretch the life of an album at least 6 months, maybe a year if you can. And I think you have to have a plan in place, because if you go to, let's say, AAA radio and you're working 8 to 10 weeks, then you still need to come up with things to keep relevant for much longer. And there are many ways to do it, but that's when you really need to start thinking about strategy and team members and how you're going to accomplish all of this.
Right. Yeah. How can an artist or band brand themselves to set them apart from their, in their target markets? And I guess, how do they even figure out what their market is?
Well, that's the first step, is figure out who you're catering to. I mean, there's a really fine line between art and then when you enter the music business, and now you have to kind of think more strategically about who you're targeting. So if you're an adult contemporary artist, let's say, and you're catering to females ages 18 to 34, 18 to 54, depending on how conservative they are, then you probably don't want to have like a punk cover art for your single or your album. You need to kind of stick with what your demographics are. And if you're going towards more rock, and you don't want something that looks too let's say Pink, or what I mean, like Tutu or Children's album. So you need to really keep in mind, remember, when you're catering to radio stations, a radio station is a business. They're not playing music as a charity. They're taking on advertisers who are also targeting those demographics. And so when you have a song that fits to those demographics, that's when you're going to get played on that specific genre of radio. They're not playing stuff just to be nice to you. They're playing things that fit within their objectives. And so that's really important to keep in mind. And so everything from artwork to how your website is being perceived, to what you're posting on the social media, and of course the music itself, all needs to kind of fit within that target market or demographic.
Speaking of radio, and I'm maybe a little biased towards Play MPE being used for this, for promo distribution, but if an artist is seeking radio play, how do they go about it?
Well, the first thing is, many of the promoters out there have their own systems. And of course, honestly, everybody uses Play MPE. So it'd be hard to find a genre that doesn't work with a digital delivery system. Play MPE is certainly a leader there. How they would go about it is research, and more importantly, word of mouth recommendations is very important. There's a lot of people who online look great, and they've paid a lot of money to clean up things and make themselves look great. That doesn't necessarily mean they're a great promoter. I know of a few that I would avoid like the plague, but when you go online and you start looking things up, they look great, but there's been a lot of effort to clean up the negative sides of that. So word of mouth is probably the best way to find your team members.
What are some common mistakes that artists make?
Well, obviously there's a whole spectrum that we see,
Sure.
but I'm going to use what we do with Play MPE as just kind of an example, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. Good. Yeah.
A lot of people will go and they'll do a service, and they'll send the music out, and the mistake would be not using the tools at their fingertips to see, there are actually reports that you can download to see who's downloaded the record or who streamed the record. And so taking the time to go and look at those reports and then think ahead of time and say, oh, I know this station downloaded it or streamed it. So take the next step and follow up with those contacts and see what they thought about the record and contact them. Once you send something out, follow up is so important because it shows that it's a priority and that somebody's working it. Otherwise, it's just going to get lost.
Do you have any final tips, notes, messages for artists either promoting themselves or working with promoters?
Yeah, okay, first of all, I want to say I can't say enough how important it is for education. You have got to be a well-rounded artist. I said on my Facebook page not long ago that I remember the days where you didn't have to be a marketing genius to sell a few records. The environment right now out there is tough. It's competitive.
Yeah.
And, if you're someone who's got, financial resources to hire the whole team, that's great. But you still have to know how things work. And so go take a couple marketing classes, go take, learn about PR, learn about strategy, learn about, managing, and how to make money online, how to sell. You've got to know these things as an artist. It takes time. So nobody gets brought into this world knowing everything, but it's really important that you do understand it. And I can't say enough. I have people come to me who's been in this business for 20 years and they still don't understand it. And there's no excuse for that. You need to understand your business. And even though you're the artist, you know what? You're in the music business as soon as you decide you want to sell music.
Yeah, it is the music business. Business is half of it, at least.
Exactly. And it's very hard for the artistic brain to work with the more practical side of the brain, I understand, but you have to. You absolutely have to. I would like to see, people open their mind to not doing the same thing they see everybody else doing. I'd like to see people be creative with their marketing and reach out to other areas. There's a big world out there and it's not just the United States. There are avenues that you can go after. You've got the whole digital world. You've got other territories, other countries. So don't pigeonhole yourself by just seeing what other people are doing. Branch out and really think through who you're targeting, what you want them to do, and then go after it. And you'd be surprised that you're not really pigeonholed. It's your own mind that kind of keeps you in this little ball. So get past that, and I think most bands will see some success.
Terrific. Make sure to follow Play MPE and hashtag Play MPE book on all of your socials and stay looped on future online events and news. And of course, follow Music Promotion Inc. on all their social channels. And thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Goodbye, Amanda.
Bye. Thank you.